As leaders, we have influence. We've got it in the church. We represent the church. We represent faith. We represent Jesus himself. So the question becomes, how do others see Jesus in you? Do they see him alive and relevant? Or do they see him dead and meaningless?
Is the reason our culture is generally not interested in Jesus really about Jesus or more about us as his representatives in the world? Well, on this episode of FCCI's Pathway to Purpose podcast, Ross Allen Hill will dig into the necessity of Christian business leaders smashing through the silos that might keep our faith hidden from the world around us. And that question he posed is absolutely core to the vision of FCCI, transforming the world through Christ, one company leader at a time. And we're committed to accomplishing that vision through our mission, which states, in pursuit of Christ's eternal objectives, we equip and encourage Christian business leaders to operate their businesses and conduct their personal lives in accordance with biblical principles. One of the ways to engage that mission statement is through our annual conference that is quickly approaching, September 15 through 18 in Lake Tahoe. Those who attend will be equipped and inspired through top-tier training from Donald Miller, Jordan Rayner, Richard Blackaby, Crawford Loritz, Catherine Egan, and many others. And the time of fellowship that we spend together is life-changing, and we strongly encourage us to attend and participate to soak in God's truth and partner in all that he will accomplish through the platform of business in the year ahead. We'll learn more at conference.fcci.org. And now let's hear this leadership message that Ross did deliver at an FCCI conference several years ago.
You know, I used to live my life in silos. Robert talked about it yesterday in his testimony, talking about compartmentalizing our lives. And the different silos I had were incredible. You know, I had my family silo, and I had my work silo, and I had my play silo, and I had my golf time silo, and I had my church silo, and I had my spiritual silo. Lots of different silos. And I think many of us today live our lives in those silos. Much like the photo behind me, we've walled off these sections of our lives, and we've compartmentalized them, and we've put them into separate areas, and it makes life really, really difficult for us. When we partition our lives, when we put our lives into these silos, we virtually make our witness useless for the Lord. And what we need to do is we absolutely need to smash those silos and let God permeate every area of our life. But too often we don't do that. Too often we want our lives to matter. We come to conventions like this. We listen to great speakers. But we go home and we still live our lives in these compartments. We still live our lives in these different silos. We don't allow Jesus to permeate anything and everything. And because we live these siloed lives, our ability to witness and the strength of our witness is greatly impaired. This siloed lifestyle is ruining our ability to witness. It ruins our ability to witness to our employees, to our vendors, to our customers, to our communities. And I just don't think it's the way Jesus intended for us to live at all. We need to smash our silos and live the way the Lord wants us to. He created us for this day and time. There is no question about it. If you ever wondered why you were born now and you read this slide, you can make no mistake that you are here today, now, to face what we face in the world and in this country. God ordained you to be here now, to be alive now, to make a difference today. You know, many of us, and I've said it, you know, I wish I'd been born a few decades earlier, maybe just after the Second World War, so I didn't have to endure that. But maybe I could be a little older and be at the sunset of my life because I don't like what's going on right now. But God picked the day and the time for me to be born. And he did for every one of us. And we are here on purpose because of God's design to make a difference in the world. He's called us all in this room to be leaders. We lead in many, many different ways in different companies and around this globe, really. We're called to be leaders, to make a difference. And we need to allow Jesus into every area of our lives. We cannot compartmentalize him. We cannot put him on the shelf and be effective. Many people say today, well, the problem is the church. The church has lost its impact on culture. And maybe that's true. I'm not going to argue that point. But then where the conversation goes is, well, it's the pastor's fault. It's the church leadership's fault. And that I'm going to argue with. So what we do is we fire our pastors on average, depending on who you read, 12 to 16 months is the average stay of a pastor in a church today. And I think we've got it all backwards. I actually think that the problem is not the pastors or church leadership. The problem is the people sitting in this room and attending this convention and all across America, whether they're here or not, the leaders in these churches that are compartmentalizing their lives, not allowing Jesus to permeate every area of their life and to allow their lives to be the salt and the light and the love of Jesus. God's calling us to do that, to be that at work and at play and at the club and in worship and in family life and in politics. That's what he's called us to be. That's what he wants us to do. And I've kind of coined the phrase, and I left one word out of it, but here it is. So goes the business leaders, so goes the church. I wish I would have added one more word in that sentence, but I really believe that's true. We want to blame it. We like to blame things on everybody but ourselves. And we don't like to look in the mirror. And look at me. Look in the mirror. It's not a fun experience. I get it. But the problem is when we don't look in the mirror and see ourselves for the reality of what we're doing for the Lord in our lives, in every area of our lives, we allow ourselves to be siloed. We lose the power and the impact we could have on society. So, because we're doing that, many times we don't have any influence for the kingdom. We don't have it over our employees. We don't have it over our vendors. God's called us to do that very thing. God trusted us to be leaders. He gave us a business. He gives us employees. He gives us customers. And he wants us to use our time effectively for him. So I think we lose when we silo our lives. The greatest opportunity we have, I think, as business leaders is our own employees. We look out and we want to use our lives for influence, but we forget the very people God has given us to. I was recently attending a meeting, and there was about 75 pastors in the room, and it was a luncheon, and this guy that was running it allowed everybody to stand up and introduce themselves. Big mistake, number one. Pastors, number two. So he said, if you take a breath, you're done. And this is a big old guy, muscular, goes to the gym every day. You're not the guy you want to meet in a dark alley. And so everybody listened, and they quickly went through it. When they got to me, I said, I'm Ross Hill, pastor of Bank 2. And I sat down. And everybody started laughing. And one guy that stood up next to introduce himself turned around and said, what? But you know what? I am, and you are too. God called you to lead that company, to be a shepherd to your folks. And if you silo your life, you can't do it. And he gave you those people to have the most influence over. If you look past them, you're looking past the very group God put right in front of you to lead for him. Well, I love Faraday. Anybody watch Faraday show? Recently, he did an interview of Webb Simpson. Did anybody see that interview? Good, then I could tell all the stories about it I want. It's an incredible interview. If you get a chance to see it, you must see it. It's a must-see. I tried to secure the video for this presentation, and I wasn't able to do that yet. But Webb Simpson was being interviewed, and near the end of the interview, Faraday asked him about his faith. And this is what Webb Simpson said. Webb Simpson is a professional golfer, very successful one, and this is what Webb says. He says, "My faith and relationship with Jesus is what fuels everything. I once had everything in priorities, siloed, compartmentalized. Faith, family, work, and so on. And he said it was really hard to juggle all those things." Wow. You been there? You know that pain. And he said, so I was talking to my mentor and coach, and he encouraged me to get rid of my priorities, get rid of my compartments, get rid of my silos, and just allow God to be part of everything in my life. And since he encouraged me to do that, it has fueled the passion for everything we do in life. Man, the truth is, I started trying to find some more information about Webb, and he's had a successful career, but his career definitely took a big change. And I'd just love to know if that big change towards success happened when he smashed his silos and quit prioritizing, quit putting life in silos, and just let Jesus permeate everything. I believe it is. As leaders, we have influence. We've got it in the church. We represent the church. We represent faith. We represent Jesus himself. So the question becomes, how do others see Jesus in you? Do they see him alive and relevant? Or do they see him dead and meaningless? Man, that's a question we all need to answer. That's a question that, if you went up and asked your employees, how do you see Jesus in my life? What would they say? Better yet, if somebody else asked them where they had no fear of anything, what would they say? What would they say? I've been to China a lot, and several times anyhow, and in China, employees are really abused in many, many ways. I was in a factory. Instead of having chairs for the employees to sit on, they were sitting on a 5-gallon plastic bucket. No back support. Sat there for 8 and 10 hours a day. You think anybody's seeing Jesus through that business owner's life? And we told him about it, and he bought chairs with back support, lumbar support for every employee. It's amazing. Leadership is one of the absolute spiritual gifts that God gives. And if we're not smashing our silos and allowing God to permeate every area of our life, then we are ruining a spiritual gift that God has given us. I think we as leaders are supposed to be the evangelist. I think we're really supposed to be the ones that evangelize the world. And I think if we used our businesses to do that, we could change the world quickly. Think about the number of customers you have. My little piddly bank in Oklahoma City, we've got 7,000 customers across this country, from Hawaii to Maine and from Alaska to Florida. What if we were doing everything we could to honor Jesus? What kind of influence would we have? If we've got 70 employees, 3 or 4 people in a family, there's 200, 300 people we have influence over. What, are we wasting that opportunity? How about our vendors, our suppliers? What kind of influence can we have? It's amazing what we can do. You think we don't have influence as leaders? This tells the story. Whether you agree with this research or not, I happen to believe it in principle. We've got 8,000 times more influence over people than pastors in the church. I mean, we are the evangelists for the Lord. We need to live like it. We need to take that responsibility. We need to do what we can to have this incredible influence. At work, I've got 46 hours a week on average to influence my employees. It's an incredible amount. Compared to the church, maybe a fourth of an hour, a half of an hour, the pastor actually gets to influence you through your message, through his message. It's an amazing amount of influence. And yet, so many times, so often, we don't understand the real weight of our influence on our employees. And we don't understand that when we live a life that's not like Jesus, and we don't ask the question, what would Jesus do when we need to fire somebody? What would Jesus do when we need to change the course of things? What would Jesus do when tough situations come into our business? If we're not sitting there asking those questions, we're destroying our witness for the Lord. So I think it's just an absolute heavy, heavy responsibility for us. I think our influence is God ordained. Our calling to lead the world to Jesus is unquestioned. The question is, how are we doing it? And for many of us, I think we're doing it like this. This is how I was doing it a few years ago. This is a great auditorium in Atlanta, the Winnett Center. I think it holds like 15 or 18,000 people. And maybe not all of them, but many of the great church leaders were at this Catalyst meeting. Any of you been to Catalyst? Yeah, it's a great meeting, and wonderful, motivating meeting. I was there. And a few years ago, opening ceremonies, opening exercises, the first morning of Catalyst, they gave everybody, all these great church leaders, a little light. And we had it on our fingers. And this is a photograph of that. Man, doesn't that look pretty? That's cool. And there's a song, that this little light of mine, let it shine, let it shine. How many of you know that song? You want me to sing it for you? Yeah. No, didn't think so. Well, you know what? I got 15 grandkids, and I refuse to teach that song to them because I think that song's from Satan, at least where Christianity's concerned. We're not supposed to be little lights. Little lights have no influence. Can you tell how many people are in that auditorium? Just only by that little light. Can you see what else is going on in there? You can't see anything. It's just a little light. Well, you know what? The Winnett Center is really cool. It's just like all these big arenas. It's got this big central hallway that goes all the way around it. And the outside's glass. And this was 8:30 in the morning. And to get to your seat, you walk around this hallway and you go, oh, there's an opening. You open a door and you go in and you either go up to your seat or down to your seat. And while I still had my phone out, this was taken on my iPhone, as only God could do, he showed me what we're supposed to look like. We are supposed to be as bright as the sun at its earliest light in the morning. at its brightest light in the morning. Judges 5:31. But there's 6 other verses in the scriptures that talk about we are to be like the light at its brightest point in the day. That is not a spotlight. That is the sun shining through a window, perfectly positioned as only God could do it, to shine through that doorway when the door opened and shine into that arena. And I don't know what you noticed, but number one, I noticed I can see colors of clothing in the background. Couldn't see that with our little light. I noticed there's people standing. Couldn't see that with those little lights. I noticed there's people looking for a seat. You couldn't see that with the little light. When we're a little light, nobody can see Jesus. But when we're bright and bold like this is a perfect image of how our lives are supposed to look at work. In the very place God ordained us to be leaders. The job he gave us to do. And we can't do it if we compartmentalize Jesus and take him out of the workplace or focus on everybody else besides our employees. Our employees are our congregation. Our employees really are our extended family. If somebody dies in your family, what do you do for them? Man, you're there. You're answering the phone for them. You're washing dishes for them. You're taking trash out. My wife's a servant. She's always doing the menial tasks. She's always taking the trash out or washing dishes for people or something else. She's got a servant's heart. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go to the funeral home with them if they need it. We're supposed to drive them to the doctor if they need that. We're supposed to love on our people. We're to be the salt and the light and the love of Jesus. They're supposed to be able to see Jesus as easy as you can see that bright light. Not those little lights. Nothing happens there. But here, man, I've got that picture on my iPhone to remind me constantly that I need to be like the light. I need to be Jesus.
Can people easily see Jesus in us through our actions and reactions to our team, our employees, as they journey through the daily stresses, the joys, the heartaches, and the victories? I love Ross's strong plea that we get down in the dirt, so to speak, and engage in real-life conversations with those in our sphere of influence. And that is often what we're praying together over as leaders when we come together in FCCI leadership groups around the world. It's about asking God to speak through us and to us as we make decisions and serve the people in our care. If you're not part of an FCCI leadership group, please consider it and take a look at fcci.org to learn more today. Well, thanks for listening, and may God continue to encourage your journey as you lead a company for Christ.